Hey, everybody. Welcome back once again. This is Mark Lawrence, and we're all set to go against the spread on the Proline TV Super Bowl Aftermath podcast. We'll hit on that, and we'll also talk a little bit about college hoops and perhaps some NBA on today's edition of Against the Spread. And with that, let's welcome in our cast of experts onto the show. First of all, in Las Vegas, the legend himself, Jim Feist. Jim, how are you doing these days?
I'm doing great. I'm not a big Bad Bunny fan, but
who is?
I'm going to always call this Super Bowl the Bad Bunny Super Bowl because I had a fantastic day. So I'm gonna say Bad Bunny was good luck for me.
Bad Bunny was good to you, yes.
You must have been holding his foot. You must have had the lucky bunny rabbit foot.
Well, I could say this: he energized that Super Bowl, that stadium. We didn't understand what he was saying, most of us, because we don't speak Spanish. But
yet he got fined for cursing in Spanish.
Did
you hear that?
There was somebody that came on TikTok, I think it was, and or it might have been Instagram. He did a whole breakdown of what Bad Bunny was doing in that. And what he was doing is sending out a message about what's going on in Puerto Rico. And with the power lines and stuff where they have blackouts constantly.
The hurricane years ago.
He was giving a message, but most people wouldn't understand it. So because first of all, it was in Spanish, and secondly, most people don't know what's happening in Puerto Rico. And so I watched that and I said, I had no idea what he was doing. And now I understand it.
Well, the strange thing is he speaks English also, but he chose to do the show entirely in Spanish, which was a little bit of a surprise.
Of course, in the NFL's infinite wisdom, they do use, sign language for the singing of the anthems and the other songs. Why didn't they have subtitles beneath what he was singing?
Because there were a lot of words that would get the FCC. They get in trouble with the FCC.
Well, I think they did get fined for some of them, so you black those out or whatever.
Well,
it's such a silly thing. With
more than 50% of the words were.
Yeah. Well,
so. And of course, I didn't realize there was an alternative
halftime
show with who was it?
The Charlie Kirk Foundation
with Kid Rock lip syncing.
That's the alternate one.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was watching the replay of the Puppy Bowl.
We do live in a very broken down society. Divided society. Yeah,
that was a mega alternate show, is what it was, a halftime show, and unfortunately, they didn't get the eyeballs that the Super Bowl did.
No, that would be hard. I mean, I didn't even know it existed. But
Bad Bunny, apparently, I don't know, he was I think second to Taylor Swift as far as Spotify hits last year. So he obviously has a very, very, very widespread audience.
Are you serious? I have no idea about that.
Yeah.
No.
He does.
I read that in a couple of places.
Oh, for sure he does. Yeah, he's worldwide famous.
Yeah.
I do love the name. Bad Bunny is a great name.
Yeah.
And really rather humble as a person too. He's just, he's not all into himself.
He's like 30 years old. He's just pretty young.
And I saw him on Stephen Colbert, and Colbert asked him, what will you be doing in 5 years? And his answer was, retired. I'll be retired.
Smart man.
Yes.
Yeah, they actually played a replay of that show, I think, on Monday, where they had the questionnaires with him. Yeah, the night after the Super Bowl, they replayed that Colbert show where he was on.
So, Greg, were you tuned into Bad Bunny, or did you turn off at half and turn it back on for the second half?
I didn't even, like I said last week, I didn't even start watching until after halftime. So this is the first time though that I actually, maybe I should have watched the commercials, and I feel old though, because I was reading one of your coffee club emails this past week, and it's titled "Grinding Out the Profits: Too Much AI." Super Bowl commercials are a beloved tradition of the NFL's championship game each year, but football fans weren't too pleased with an early theme in the ads of the broadcast throughout the first quarter. It didn't take too long for folks watching at home to notice the abundance of artificial intelligence ads that were played early on in the game throughout the first quarter. It felt as if every commercial break featured some kind of advertisement for AI. The abundance of AI ads from companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, which had 2 commercials for its AI chat box Claude before the first quarter had even concluded, left NFL fans miffed, and they didn't hesitate to take to social media to share their thoughts. See below. The AI ads are pissing me off. Oh my God, the commercials suck this year. You remember that Super Bowl where it felt like every ad was crypto? This is the AI Bowl. And 3 AI commercials within the first 45 minutes of the Super Bowl. We are in hell. If I see one more AI commercial, I might snap. And that the reason I feel old is because this is the first time in years where I thought the commercials were good. I actually liked some of the commercials, and I was looking at the ones that I liked, and I go, oh, yeah, let's see. Billy Bass. Yeah, that's kind of old. Let's see. Ben Stiller. Yeah, I guess he's kind of old. Not sure how many young people like him. The prostate cancer tight end ad. That's not old. That might identify. The Chris Hemsworth Alexa ad. That should identify to people who are really into Marvel. But the Jurassic Park Xfinity ad, yeah, that's old. So most of the ones that I liked, I can understand why some of the young people didn't like them when I did.
By the way, Greg, you did something a little bit unique, I guess. You woke up for the second half of the game. The Patriots did not.
Yeah, one half of the side of the field did not wake up. That's for sure. You have to wonder how many of those commercials were AI generated as well. I'm sure maybe they may not have been 100% AI, but a lot of their influence and a lot of the production was AI produced.
Did you see the picture that was floating around on the internet the week before where they showed the NFL, the graphic about the 2 quarterbacks at the front were Darnold and May, and they said that was back in September? I think that was AI generated.
Well, it could.
I don't know if you saw the one. It was like no. the what would normally be like the cover of the program.
I did see that. That was quite amazing. If it was true, I don't
believe it was true.
Okay.
Well, that's the problem with AI. We don't know what we're watching is true or it's not. That's the issue.
Hey, people don't know if this podcast is being recorded or AI.
Right. Greg could put up a couple of emojis and symbols and whatnot, and everybody would think it's an AI
and
podcast.
What those commercials were doing is conditioning the public for AI as the wave of the future, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And I usually have an episode every week where I have a conversation with Google, the AI on the phone and all that.
The Gemini?
The Gemini and the Google Assistant. And I Google it for information that I know just to check myself. And I know that I'm correct because I check it several times. And I would say 60 to 70% of the time, they come up with an incorrect answer.
Well, all they're basically doing is they're scouring the internet for any information about a question you ask. And if that information was posted wrong or falsely, that doesn't report that information, not to report that it's true or false, just to report the information.
Oh, yeah, no, but what I do is I then say, okay, I better not say it because it'll trigger my phone. But if I use the words and then I say, well, according to the research that I have, that such and such did not occur first. It was this event that occurred, and I give the date and everything. And a few, 10 seconds later, it'll come back and say, oh, I'm sorry. You are absolutely correct. I was wrong before. The correct information is, and they repeat what I said. And that happens about 60% of the time, 60, 70% of the time.
Well, you have to understand the nuances of it if you're working with it. And I work with it a lot now. I find myself doing that, not wanting or really choosing to do so, but I know it ends up saving a lot of time, and it also helps in rephrasing things that you were about to say. So there's pluses and there's minuses. Yeah. My granddaughter's biggest complaint is that it utilizes too much water for all of their computers. It just sucks the water dry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the big controversies coming up with all these companies that are getting, all the startups now that are getting into the AI industry, that, the people are complaining that when they move into that area, it's going to drain. Like I could not see it happening here in Vegas where we already have a water issue, or California.
Well, just use the Pacific or Atlantic Ocean. That's a pretty big body of water.
Yeah. Well, this is why I like using it.
There you go.
There you
go. See, you never looked any better, Mark.
Well,
now wait a minute. Does that say bad Feist, bad Isco, bad Lawrence, Bad Greg.
Bad Bunny. No Bad Bunny though.
No mention of Bunny there though.
No, that was actually if I still
like
have I think I have the thumbnail that I used for your show in here somewhere.
Now, Greg, here's a project now for you. Considering Jim's results that he detailed before with the props and everything, have one of the memes with a little Bad Bunny hopping across the bottom of the screen. For next week.
Bad Bunny.
Yeah, no, a little bunny rabbit that hops across the screen, just to everything else being bad, and we have the good rabbit.
Yeah, actually, I had. See if I could get the one, because I did have one with. Let's see. I think this is it. Let me make sure. Place the destination.
By the way, you know what that expression looks like, Mark, on your face, and the shape and everything looks like the wizard from the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, really? Huh?
The look.
Looking
when he appears behind the curtain.
Straight at someone, yes.
Yeah.
There it is.
Wow.
This was Jim's commercial. This was Jim's thumbnail for the pizza show. And here's Bad Bunny. And there's the Billy Bass.
Oh.
So, and of course, Jim's toasting the Super Bowl. So I had to use this. I try to milk this image of you, Jim, as often as possible. This is not AI, by the way. This is the original Jim Feist.
That's true.
Was that a white shawl?
No, this was at the. I don't know. Remember when it was sometime in July? We were down at the beach and sitting on the patio having a cocktail. And what the hell was the name of the hotel? I can't remember right now. But it was
here
down
in town or in California?
California.
Okay.
Yeah, California. It was great. Oh, Trend Tacklers is asking anyone's thoughts on Kenneth Walker as MVP, or is there someone else would have given it to? Well, the only other person for me, I thought Walker deserved it.
Well, the other one would be the kicker.
That's
the other one that would come into play would be the kicker. But they were very short field goals, and normally you don't give it to a kicker. And considering the performance that Walker had, and of course, remember he also had all those yards taken away from the holding penalty that eliminated the touchdown. But Walker, I think, set the tone early. But give the Patriots defense a lot of credit. They held them to 5 field goals and 1 touchdown. It wasn't the Patriots defense that played poorly in that.
So who do you think should have won it, Jim?
Oh, I agree with Walker. With Walker. I'm with Andy. If it wasn't Walker, it had to be the kicker.
Yeah, we set a Super Bowl record, 5 field goals, which win the football game.
Right.
Yeah.
But if they were sort of like what you would call chip shots, if the majority of them were over 50 yards, would you reconsider that, Andy?
I probably would, but again, it's very unusual for a kicker. And if it were a close game, and the field goals were, let's say, 45 yards and longer, all of them, or maybe 4 out of the 5, and the game was like a 27-24, 27-21 type game, then I would say so, because the field goals in that situation would have been critical to the outcome of the game.
If the final score would have been 15-10, and all the points came from the kicker, you would definitely give it to the kicker.
The other possibility, and I think you'd have a hard time picking one out, but you could have given it to a Seattle defensive player.
Yeah, Wosu, who had the touchdown, probably would have been the one to represent.
Or the one who had the multiple sacks.
And look, that was one of those situations because I had never won an MVP before. And I told you guys about Kenneth. I think he was 14-1 at the time when we talked about it. This was the week before. No, this was actually, this was it might have been I don't know if it was even before the NFC Championship game. But anyway,
it probably was, because I think when the odds came out right after the championship game, Walker, I believe, was for Seattle the third choice between Njibka and Sam Darnold.
Yeah, so he was like 14-1 when I got him. I think he came in.
Yeah, so that had to be, I think, before the championship game, because I think he opened at 8-1 and got dropped a little bit.
Probably,
like 6.5 to 1.
Yeah. And so I was sweating it out, and this is a weird way to make money. It's like waiting for the commercial break to come back with the award, who's going to win the MVP. And then once I saw Kenneth Walker on the stage, I knew he was going to get it. But it turned out and Jim talked about off the air, and he talked about a little bit on the air too, that it was a big a winner for him, the Super Bowl. And And it was probably the best Super Bowl I had for earnings as well. So I wanted to ask you guys, could you name, doesn't have to be football, could you name a game, a pick, a specific handicapping analysis, something that you've had in your career that you're the most proudest of? Because I know we all remember the ones that beat us. Those are always the ones that stick to our craw more than anything. But we also remember the really good ones. I'll remember this for the rest of my life because it was very impactful and it was a big game. So you guys have to have, or I'm just guessing, some sort of memory of something that you felt the most proudest or you made the most money on during your handicapping career.
Well, not so much for me. It would not so much be a game in particular or a game result in particular, but one of the things that I still love today is the fact that I had bet Ohtani to win the MVP award the year that he won the MVP award, and I got him at 100-1. The next year he's odds-on favorite, and he's been everything but that since. And it was just a good feeling to watch him all season long, to see him carve his way into a most valuable player. And when that announcement came, like you, Greg, waiting for Kenneth Walker, I was also the same way, waiting for Ohtani to be announced, because that's a nice chunk of change. Okay.
Yeah. The only thing you were sweating was no injuries.
Yes, throughout the course of the season. Right.
So was it a close call, or as far as him getting the award?
No, it really truly wasn't. No.
Okay. So basically,
it may have been a unanimous or very close.
When did you know? At what point of the season? Halfway through?
I would say just about halfway through. The rationale behind it is, he was the Japanese superstar of superstars. The guy could pitch, the guy could hit, and he was an excellent in the field. And, all three things he brings to the table. No player in Major League Baseball does that or has ever done that, probably never will do that. And now he got traded to the Dodgers, and he'll get spotlighted playing for the Dodgers more so than the Angels. I just thought it was a real nice, neat, opportune time to capitalize on who would be eventually in the talk for the greatest Major League Baseball player of all time.
That's a good one. How about you, Andy?
Yeah, let me see if I can get my camera to work again. I've got two things that I'll have to. Well, let me see if I can do this here. But okay. Let's see. We should be able to get it going now. Okay. I guess there are two things. One I've talked about before. It was a Super Bowl with the Bears and I think it was the Bears and the Colts, if I remember, where Devin Hester scored the kickoff return, and I had a lot on that. It was like 25-1, and it covered about 3 or 4 different propositions, all in the first 15 seconds of the game. But the one that I guess I'm most, proud is right the word. Certainly the one that was the most remarkable one was. It was an achievement more so than an individual game, and that is when I used to write for Gaming Today for many, many years, and I would write a weekly column and give point spread selections, either side or total. And back, I want to say it was like about 2001, 2002, I ended up going 15 for 15 in the paper that one week.
Wow!
So that's about 15 lifetimes worth of probabilities or something.
Was that a weekly thing?
Gaming Today, it used to be, Jim, you would remember it as Sports Form before it became Gaming Today. Yeah. Now they're all digital and everything. But
that was who was the owner of that? That was
Chuck DeRocco.
Chuck DeRocco, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are picks you kept making every week. Okay.
Greg, I have a question for you. Yeah. There's people that ask questions or make comments, and I answer them. They show up, but immediately they go away.
Oh, I'm thinking you're not. I didn't know you were answering them. I thought that those were error messages. That's why I'm deleting them. Yeah, you got to let me know if you're going to answer them on there, so I know not to do that. I have no idea it was you.
See, Toma and Trent Tacklers. It's not me. I'm sending answers, and it's him.
Yeah,
it's him over there. He's erasing me. He's got a pencil with an eraser on it. And he's using it on me. But anyway, Trent Tacklers. I appreciate that. Kenneth Walker is my choice there. I would have gone that way. And Toma, the ladders were fun. I love cashing on that. And as far as the cancer is concerned, Paul Allen had it. He beat it. I'm trying. I'm working. Thank you.
So when you hit the Devin Hester one, that must have been the most exciting, since it happened. Actually, you probably, well, obviously it happened as you were watching it.
Yeah.
And it was such a big number at 25-1. You can't, that's like hitting a 25 or 50-1 shot in horse racing.
Yeah,
You
well,
know, because it happened so quickly.
It's not quite like Mark's 100-1 on Shohei, where he had to sweat out an entire
Months.
season. I just had to sweat out about 15 seconds to make sure there was no flags being shown on the screen. But that was the start of a good Super Bowl, and it was one that I remember still to this day. I think the other one was a couple of years ago, and who was it, Uchek or whatever, for San Francisco to get the first reception in that game against Kansas City, and I think that was at 25-1 on that one.
Mark, who's the first one to put up the first prop like that? Was that was that the refrigerator? And
yes.
Was that Monteris that did that?
I think Art was somehow involved when I think he was at Caesars. He just, he has a book out. It just came out called, I think it's just called Bookie. I think it is.
He was on the show yesterday with Art. It was Chris Andrews and Art Manteris with me on the show yesterday. It was good.
And that was such an enjoyable book. I think I read it like in 2 days, about a week and a half ago. And he talks about, by the way, if you get a chance to read it, the whole way it's presented makes for a wonderful movie. So.
Great.
But I think he was involved with that, and I guess he probably talked about it. And in fact, I don't know if I mentioned it last week.
Andy, I asked him about the book, and I asked him how much it costs, and he said, "Well, you can get it on Amazon for this price, but it'd be double for you." I don't know what he meant by that.
Jim, we can't let you go without giving us your most give us a proud moment or something that you always remember. Maybe your biggest win.
Wow.
You had to have tons of them. So,
well, it's been a long road. It's over 60 years. I really can't remember. I'm not much of a horse guy now, but I used to have a stable. It was called First Choice Stables. And back in those days, I had my own horses. And then Secretariat was my favorite horse of all time. And I did have him to win the Triple Crown. And even though in those days I didn't make the size bets that I do now or have since, but I had a pretty good bet on him to win the Triple Crown, which he did.
What were the odds?
I don't remember, but it was one hell of a payday. And I know the funny thing was in the last race, he just blew everybody away, of course. But I was jumping up and down like a kid, I got his first popsicle. I mean, it's like, that was the most thrilling one for me. I think the biggest bet I ever made was later on. It was in a basketball game where I middled it, and the cash out from it was $35,000. But that was the biggest cash out I've ever had on any sport.
Let me put that into context, by the way. When Secretariat won the Triple Crown, it had not been accomplished in 25 years. I think it was a Citation or somebody back in the 40s won it. So this was like 25 years later. And then, of course, a few years after that, and Mark, you'll remember that as well. You had Affirmed and Seattle Sloop back-to-back years, about 4 or 5 years after Secretariat. So that was an amazing run. But I was just thinking about a lot of the amazing things that we've seen over the past few. I was just thinking about the fact that I've seen 2 of the 3. I was at 2 of the 3 Super Bowls that the Raiders won.
You mentioned Affirmed, Andy, and I remember him beating Alidar 3 races in a row, closer, and closest those races were. And the last one was a photograph, whiskers. Yeah. And what was nice is I have an autograph picture from Steve Cawthon, who wrote.
Oh, I thought you had an autograph picture from Alidar.
Oh, no. I have a hoof print from him, okay? But Steve Cawthon signed a really, really nice picture. It's in my office of the stretch run and him nipping him in the 3rd leg of the Triple Crown. And that's a possession that I really am proud of.
I remember that, the one that Jim talked about, Secretariat. Chick Anderson, who was the track announcer at Belmont Park, like a machine. He was like, he won the thing by like 30 lengths or something like that.
I think 31. It was. I think it was 1973.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that must have been some sight. I wish I could have been there.
You could see it on YouTube.
No,
and replays
no,
those
no,
races.
not that. I wish I could go back and see
Jim
we
jumps
could-
like a kid.
Jim's reaction of
we
winning
can
the
also
Triple
go
Crown
see
bet.
We could go see you, Seabiscuit on YouTube. They're all
No,
there.
I want to see the reaction of you jumping up and down and being excited about winning your Triple Crown bet.
Greg, it was the last time I was ever able to jump.
That's pretty much why I want to see that. I really do.
I
You
would
mean you
also say,
epitomize
the
white
money.
men can't jump, Jim? Is that what you're saying?
That absolutely fits
Yep.
me. Yes.
I was going to say, Jim's had so many wonderful wins over the years that we'd have to have an extra hour for him to detail them all. In fact, we'd need an extra half hour just for him to detail how well he did in this past Super Bowl.
Well, that would have to be an excerpt in your book that you're writing, Jim. Just you have to have one just for that, for my best bets.
People keep asking me to do that, but like I said yesterday, I'd have to change all the names.
Hey guys, let's do something that last week I mentioned that one of our viewers asked about, and he said, I'd love to hear a show from you guys about how you got into this business and this industry, and also what is your primary form of handicapping. So let's go around the table and do just that. Jim, let me start with you. What was it that lured you into this industry the most? And also, what would you say is your primary form of handicapping?
The second part of that is that it's changed dramatically over the years.
Yep.
Everything was eyeballing, watching as many games as I could, but you couldn't find them because back in the day, it was hard to find games on TV. It was hard to find any information. And Mark, you lived it too because we're both the same age. You couldn't find information and you couldn't even get the right final scores. I mean, for God's sake, for a long time. But it was different back then. You had to go kind of by feel. There was no analytics business. I mean, we didn't have any of that. And it was by feel. You'd watch the games or listen to the games and do the best you could with what you had, but it wasn't very much. And like I remember having a conversation with Bob Martin, who was legendary
Right.
odds maker, bookmaker. He'd sit in the stands and watch the games and for baseball and make lines off of what he was watching. And because that was all you had. You didn't have, I mean, there wasn't 20 television stations or the internet or cell phones or, you know, for God's sake, I used to have to pay porters to grab the newspapers from out of town flights so that I could read the sports pages here in Vegas back in the 70s because there was nothing else. There was no other way to get information. But
that's the same parallel you're talking about, Jim, that Billy Walters primarily did to make his launch into this profession. And he had a guy, he called him the Golden Goose. And he would have newspapers delivered to his front door from every major newspaper around the country every day. And his job was to pour through those newspapers to look for any injuries or anything that people weren't aware of, with Billy looking for an edge. And that's what you're saying. Looking for those newspapers from the airport was
That's
a
right.
form of information. Exactly.
Well, the good thing about that, and I'll say something about Billy in a minute. The good thing about that is you were getting information that even the bookmakers didn't get.
That's right.
Today that is not true. The bookmakers, odds makers get, because they're the ones that make the line. The bookmakers don't make the line. They book the bets.
Yes.
Odds makers make the line. Well, nobody had that kind of information. So if you had a place like Vegas, which is perfect because there's so many flights coming in here from all over. So if you could get those papers, and I imagine New York would be good in big cities where they're getting those in, getting that information. But nobody, no matter what we've done, myself as a handicapper or anybody else, nobody did it better than Billy.
Yeah, they used to pay people to go through the airplane. They'd pay someone at the airport when they cleaned the planes to pick up all the newspapers that the people who were flying in had left on their seats.
If I didn't get to them first, Andy, because that's what I did when I left the plane, was checked out all the pockets for any of the sports pages.
As you walked off the plane in Vegas.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I had porters that I paid to do it, and
Yeah.
I mean, so and that's how it worked. But the things have changed so much over the years. Now, all the information, I mean, if something happens right now, it just flashes up on your screen.
Yeah.
While we're talking, it's flashing up on my screen. And we're hearing about the the abduction in Arizona, and we're hearing about wars over we're seeing everything coming immediately at us, and it's an overwhelming amount of information. We never had that back in the day.
If a player is injured in a pre-training practice in August, by the time he's off the field, that news is already spread around the internet, and lines are changing. If it's like a quarterback,
that's right,
gets injured in practice.
Absolutely.
That's how quickly it's transmitted these days.
As far as now is concerned, one of the things that led me to Seattle was, first of all, I watch all the games, and sometimes I watch them a couple times. I never felt the AFC was anywhere near the NFC this year as far as quality of football. And I mean, Greg and I talked about it many times and felt that the NFC, especially the NFC West, was much better than anybody else in the NFC and in the AFC. And part of the reason is the quarterbacks, a lot of the quarterbacks were too young. And that's a big stage to be on when 100 million people are watching everything you do. And, and so much is expected of you. Well, that kind of played out that way. So the first thing I look at is strength of schedule. That's not only in football, it's in basketball. It's pretty much everything. Baseball's a little bit different because you got to go into and baseball's such an individual sport because the guy goes up to the plate by himself, the guy throws the ball by himself. It's a different kind of, it's a team event, but it's not as much a team event.
It's because you have the different starting pitcher every day. And it's kind of like in football, if you had a different starting quarterback each week.
And in baseball, the way it's played today, you almost have a different starting pitcher in the fifth inning.
Yeah.
Because, they take the guy out.
Right.
So it's a whole different world. Now they changed those rules. I don't like it, but they've changed it. So right now, the first thing I look at is strength of schedule. If there's a big disparity in experience between this quarterback and that quarterback or head coaching, and which in the Super Bowl, I didn't feel like anybody had a head coaching advantage except that. And I thought there was a big advantage, even though Darnold hadn't proved himself at the highest level of football like a Brady did or somebody like that. He definitely had more experience than May. And then I looked at the last 3 games that May played, and I can't take anything away from him, but I have to say that the team itself played the Chargers without an offensive line. They played the Houston Texans, who, by the way, I think was the best team the AFC had if they would have had an efficient quarterback. I think they could have beaten anybody in the NFC because I felt that their defense was exceptional. However, they had a quarterback that liked to give the ball to the other side, which didn't work out very well. So, and then, of course, New England ended up playing Denver, but Denver had no quarterback. They got a guy that played a couple of downs a couple of years ago, which it turned out to be a problem. And even then, it was still close. So I didn't feel like, and it worked out for me. A lot of people, had other reasons to make the bet the other way. But those things worked out because everything I thought worked out. And a lot of times they don't work out, which is why the 60% right and wrong is about what you get in the long run. But that worked out for me. But it doesn't always work that way.
Jim, do you think that Seattle wins the Super Bowl because Darnold was the better quarterback than May?
Well, absolutely. He was more efficient, didn't turn the ball over, didn't make mistakes.
Well, Seattle didn't turn the ball over at all in the playoffs any one time, which is an NFL record, which is all to the head coach, I would say.
He has matured, and he's been with 5 teams. He's matured. He realizes now that the best thing to do is let your other players do the job for you and don't try to be the hero. And he's matured, and he has the right coach to do that. It's, and a lot of times, Mark, and this, you've been around, well, all of us know this. The right mixture. I mean, how many quarterbacks have come into the league that have been ruined because they had the wrong coach? I'm going to go back to Andrew Luck. I don't think there was anybody that came into the league any better than him, but he had the wrong team because they didn't protect him. He had 1 year, he got 76 sacks in 1 year. I mean, my God, they're trying to kill him. I mean, if they, and he was so very smart to walk away before he became brain dead. I mean, not really.
Look at Caleb Williams under Eberflus in his rookie year and under Ben Johnson this past year. I think his sacks were cut down by more than half, I believe.
The owners that make these choices to put these people at the head coaching and a job when they, especially after coming off losing after losing after losing, and they regenerate them and recycle them. And no, you got to have somebody that's going to mesh and build around the core. Quarterback's the highest paying guy. So wouldn't he be that person that you would take care of the most by giving him an offensive line and a running back that could actually block for him? I mean, my God, are these people who have all this money to buy the team, how can they be so damn stupid?
Well, that's a question for the ages, Jim. The owners of these football teams, I don't think, are the sharpest knives in the drawer.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a question that gets asked way too often.
Isn't that amazing? They've been able to accumulate all this money to be able to spend, and I mean, and not do the right things.
And you mentioned Darnold, and let's keep in mind that as good as it was that he did not turn the ball over the way Stroud did for Houston. So just, I'm sure he's going to look at that situation and hopefully learn from it. That game could have been a complete blowout had Darnold actually played well, because he missed 3 touchdown passes.
Exactly. Yeah. He wasn't, that's why he didn't get the MVP.
Exactly.
He played well, but he didn't play great.
In fact, Drake May had a better quarterback rating than Darnold did, and that doesn't happen very often in Super Bowl.
Which tells you a huge fault in that quarterback rating system, because you know what? And I know it's not entirely quarterback's fault. Sacks, I don't believe, are included in that quarterback rating. He got sacked. Well, it was 7 until they realized that the interception return was an interception return and not a fumble, which would have been recorded as a sack. So I think that you have to consider that. The numbers say yes, he had a slightly better rating, but how could you have a much better rating when you're sacked 7 times or 6 times, whatever it was, and your opposing quarterback wasn't sacked at all and didn't have a turnover?
Andy, that's a great point. It goes to what they do in Major League Baseball, the fielding percentage. You take the errors out of a pitcher's body of work, and just for what he did actually do, where errors weren't involved in the outcome, and you re-rate the players. And if you do the same thing here with these quarterback ratings, and then you put sacks into them, it's going to also have a big influence factor on what this actual true quarterback rating would be. I think that's an excellent point you bring forth, Andy.
One of the things I think in baseball that they should do is when they said any run, let's say there's 2 outs in an inning, and there's an error that allows run to score. Now, any run scoring after that, because it should have been the 3rd out, is considered an unearned run. Yes. I think that's wrong. I think that because it's what the pitcher does. Okay, you overcome the error. You should not be penalized by considered earned runs for any additional runs that are given up.
They
should be earned. They should be earned runs because you had a chance to prevent them by throwing the right pitch and didn't have to rely on a fielder for something like that.
Andy, did you graduate from Penn? Toma is asking that question.
Yes.
Okay. And he's asking, how did you
get
involved?
It's not Penn State, and it's not State Penn. It's Pennsylvania.
I know. And
he's a Quaker.
And that's a hell of a university, by the way.
And I just found out, I don't know if you did, Andy, but Penn just signed their first top 1,000. Could it be 1,000? I don't know. One of the top rated prospects that they've signed in 20 years or something like that. Quarterback for football, quarterback.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because a kid that was actually going to go to Kansas State, but with the coaching change, the new coach said it's not the right system for you. You should go somewhere else. And he decided to go to Penn. He could have went to another couple of schools that were asking for him in the Power 4, but he decided, I'm going to Penn College to be a quarterback. So it's actually going to be a pretty big story.
I don't know if I know that for many years, I don't know how it's changed with the NIL, but Ivy League schools never gave athletic scholarships. They only gave scholarships based on need, financial aid. So I don't know if that's true. By the way, I think a lot of you, Mark, you and Jim, and maybe Greg know, Penn made it to the Final Four in the NCAA tournament. They're the last Ivy League team to do so. It's been 40-something years. In fact, that was the Final Four where you had 3 mid-majors and Michigan State with Magic Johnson. And I don't think we will ever see 3 mid-majors. We may never see 2 mid-majors make the Final Four, much less 3. It was Penn. I think it was DePaul, Indiana State, Penn, and Michigan State.
Yeah, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, right.
Yeah, that was it.
Now, Toma is asking, between Alan Boston and Andy, must be something in the water in South Philly. Now, I don't know if everybody knows who Alan Boston is.
It's Center City, by the way. Center City.
Okay, right. It is.
The good Italian places are down in South Philly.
Alan Boston, I've met Alan a few times. He was on the show once or twice. I think it was once. I have a very high regard for him. Now, a lot of people have issues with him for some reason, but me, I'm really very impressed with him. He's very out front. He says what's on his mind, very honest, and a hell of a handicapper as well. But a lot of people, he offends a lot of people for some reason. I think it's just because he is outspoken. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's been put in the same box here with Andy in this text. So you know him, Andy?
Well, and I've met him. I know who he is. I've seen him, and I think so, yeah, because he is outspoken. He's not afraid to criticize. I know there are a lot of college basketball coaches because he's excellent in college basketball, and he has a very negative regard for certain coaches who are thought of as perhaps amongst the top 5 or 10 in the game. He can be very critical about it, but he's honest about it, and he gives the reasons for the criticism. And if you listen to the reasons, which is what you really want to look for, there's a lot of validity to them.
He's a very genuine guy. There's no question about that. I really appreciate him, honestly.
Well, outspoken was a good choice of words to describe him, Jim, because controversial might have also been another good choice of words for him.
He is that, but that's only, people that are upset by people that are honest. I don't get that, because I would rather deal with somebody that's honest and out front and says what's exactly on their mind instead of trying to figure out, oh, he's saying this and he's saying that, but what's his real agenda? You don't have to worry about that with Alan. You know exactly who he is. And he tells you, and he's honest, and he's out front. And I like people like that.
So, Andy, what got you into this world of sports handicapping in this business here? I know you were a Penn grad. I know you and I crossed paths when the logical approach, when you were in Arkansas, I believe. Is that correct? Yes, Arkansas.
That was in the mid to late 1990s,
right?
I believe. I moved to Arkansas from the Northeast back. Well, I was doing handicapping since I was 10 or 11 years old. It began with my love of sports as a young kid. I mean, my earliest memory is the 1962 World Series between the Giants and the Yankees that went 7 games and took about 4 weeks because of all the rain. Not quite that long, but it was probably about 2.5 weeks to play the games there. And I was always very good in math. That was always my strongest subject in school, and I loved numbers. I loved reading. And so gambling and probabilities was something that I naturally gravitated to. I remember going to the library and taking out John Scarney's book on gambling. And I think I renewed it for like about 6 months before they said, okay, you can't renew it anymore. So I was able to find it in a bookstore.
Maybe buy it or get out, huh?
Yeah, something like that. You take the book out for, I think, like a week or 10 days or whatever it was. And anyway, so I started following. Baseball was the first sport I followed, but the first sport I started handicapping was college and pro football. And I probably began that, I want to say it was before the first Super Bowl was even played. I think it was like 1965. In fact, I still have my original handwritten power rating sheets from 1965 in college football when I tracked, I think it was probably about 80 teams at that time. Now, of course, there are over 230 teams when you include the I hate the NCAA for doing this. It used to be really easy to understand. Division I and Division 1A. Division I were the big schools. 1A were the Ivy League schools, the Patriot League, and all the others. So they go to FBS and FCS because there was a lot of complaints. Well, football doesn't have a national championship. Oh, well, if we change 1AA to FCS, they can no longer say that major football doesn't have a championship game because here it is, FCS. and then FBS for the bowls team. So that's the little side thing there. In any sense, I started handicapping at a young age. I basically started with football for a number of years, and then added basketball and baseball. But my style of handicapping in football, I was, Mark, a lot of things like you do. I would look at trends. I would look at point spread results to find out what were the strong areas for teams, what were the weak areas for teams, and my philosophy behind using trends or angles or whatever you want to call it is, in other words, let's say the Cincinnati Bengals are 16-3 in such and such a situation. That's not the way I looked at it. I would say the public underestimated Cincinnati in 16 of 19 situations because Cincinnati outperformed expectations 16 times, underperformed expectations in 3 times. So I was handicapping, in effect, I was using it to looking at the public's perception of these teams as opposed to the teams themselves, even though, of course, it's the teams themselves that provided the result. So that used to be the first form that I looked at how teams did according to public expectation. And gradually I started to use more and more of the power ratings. The way that I describe my handicapping style is sort of the way handicapping itself in the industry has evolved over the years. And Jim brought it up, a good point. At the very start, you had a feel for the game. The number, you started with the intangibles, and then you worked your way to developing power ratings. Today, with all the information out there, everybody's got power ratings, and now you have to interpret the intangibles. You know, the old Jim, remember the old Jimmy the Greek check mark for the intangibles? Yep. You know, situation, home field advantage, rivalry, revenge, things like that. That is now secondary to the power ratings. I mean, you look at college basketball, the Bart Torvik, the Ken Palm. Those numbers are within a point or two generally of the point spread. So, which tells me that they have such respect that the lines makers have respect for them because they know that a lot of the handicappers, the big money handicappers, are going to be looking towards those sites for the information. And now it's a question of, how will these teams play in this situation? And that's where you have to factor in the intangibles that really can't be quantified. For example, strength of schedule may be included in the numbers themselves, but you don't know how they're included. But if you do what Jim says and what I do, Mark, I think what you do, what Greg probably does as well, you break down the strength of schedule, whether it be common opponents, whether it be, did we play a backup quarterback or a starting quarterback, and make adjustments based on that. So I've sort of melded the two between, I never really call it analytics. I called it, mathematical handicapping, And there are some formulas that people still can't explain to me. For example, the EPA, the expected points added, which is a big number that people use for evaluating defenses. Nobody can explain the formula to me. And it's sort of like a formula that, you put this here, you get 4.75 times something or other, where you come up with those numbers as opposed to, hey, yards per game, that's nice. There are some fallacies there. Okay, you have to weed those out. A team that averages, 125 yards per game rushing. Okay, well, how about you factor out those kneel downs at the end of the game, and because in other words, you take out 7 yards and 7 rushing attempts, you get a different yards per rush for that game than you do when you include everything. So you have to factor out a lot of those things. So I sort of meld the two. So as where my starting point was more along the lines of the field test and some numbers, that's now the secondary. That's now my the end point. Now is where I come up with the interpretation of the numbers.
Well, Andy, a lot like you, who we crossed paths with earlier on in our careers, I loved math and I loved history in school, and I love sports. I mean, when the paper was delivered to our house, my sister and I would yell out, "I got the sports, I got the comics." And I would yell out, "I got the sports."
Let me guess, Mark, and you always in baseball season turn to the sports section so you could see the averages of all the baseball players and the pitching records that they published once a week on Sundays.
And their minor league players and their averages as well. Exactly. In fact, I used to play a thing called dice baseball, and I would have my own dice baseball leagues. When you roll the dice, when you roll them, they have an equivalency. 6 and 6 is a home run, 3 and 3 is a triple, things like that.
Are you talking about Stratomatic?
No. This is just a
pure APBA or game you invented.
This is the game of dice baseball that kids like me in the projects who couldn't afford to buy a Stratomagic game, we did with the pair of dice. Okay. And I would keep
Same
records.
Concept. Yeah.
Yes. I would keep records of every team. I had baseball cards and I would make teams from those cards, and I would have batting orders, and I would have, here, Bobby Locke is pitching today and he's going up. Here's the batting order. And I would chart their records and who led the league in home runs and all through dice baseball. And what it was basically was getting me ready for sports handicapping in the sense that it became mathematical to me. Not so much the law of averages of dice baseball, but it had my mind thinking in that right frame of mind. You mentioned, Andy, what in Arkansas, and did you used to be affiliated with? I can't remember the DAX book, DAX book.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes.
Right.
I
Well,
remember. Didn't you buy that from him?
I
at one
did.
point?
From Al
Yeah.
Thompson, was it right?
Yeah, Al Thompson. Yeah.
Right. Well, it was a great reference source to log and chart stats with, and I used to do it religiously. And then he made it. He's going out of business, and I bought it and I turned it into the stat and log book. So today I do just that. I hand log every stat from every football game played, and I log it in coded colors. If anything is positive, it's in black. If it's anything negative, it's in red. So I can just take a look at my stat and logbook and just look at it visually and see if a team is going good or going bad just by the colors of what it is that I'm looking at.
And you do that all by hand, Mark?
All by hand. And I still do it today, all by hand. Okay. I don't have to, but I do. It's just sort of ingrained in my blood and my DNA.
It helps you spot things that you would not normally see if you just downloaded stats and put them in a program and do that, because of all of a sudden you see a number, you recognize a number that seems out of whack when you're actually writing it down, and so you're focusing on it as opposed to just seeing it. Because I do the same thing. I put things down on paper before I put them on the computer, and if I see something wrong, I'll go back and check it. And 9 times out of 10 it's right, but it's not the 9 times out of 10 that I'm concerned about. It's the one time that I'm wrong that I want to make sure I correct.
Well, by doing that, you're also you're in ahead of the patterns. You're seeing a pattern develop with the football team. This team has got holes, and it's no surprise that they continue to stay. I got to get the red pin out for this team because that's where they're going. It's the direction they're headed. So that's sort of was my MO per se, if you will. And then I began publishing the Playbook, the magazine or the newsletter. And when I published the Playbook newsletter, I got a little bit of a following. And one of our best customers was a fellow named Paul Zimmerman. I think you guys might know of him.
Yeah, Dr. Z.
Dr. Z, right. He was a real good customer of mine. And he used to love the way that I approached the game of handicapping, and I would share things with him, so forth and whatnot. And I did the same thing with Pete Axthelm. He was a big trends guy.
Yep.
And everybody thinks that I'm a big trends guy. I'm a trends guy, but I don't bet trends. Okay. I bet systems. And what Andy described before of a team like Cincinnati, all of a sudden they're doing bad or they're doing good. To me, I'll do that. But a system is not the team doing bad or doing good, or how does a team do after they score 40 or more points 3 games in a row. It's how does the league do in situations like that. Yeah. And those are the real true facts of handicapping football systems as opposed to trends. And
by the way, excuse me, what you were saying, systems and trends. The one situation where I will make an exception, and unfortunately we don't see it very more.
Andy went away.
I'll have to only guess, but when we bring him back, we'll find out exactly what it is.
Mark, can you explain what a system and trend is and how the difference? What's the difference?
But the coaches don't change.
And coaches is a big part, Andy. But Jim asked me if I can explain the difference in trends and systems. Well, just think of it simply this way: that look at a team like Andy mentioned, Cincinnati Bengals, and what do the Cincinnati Bengals do when they score less than 10 points? And all of a sudden, they've got a trend going where they bounce back real well. So 9 of the last 10 times Cincinnati scored less than 10 points, they do this. They're 8-1 to the spread. That's a trend. But a system isn't applied to just Cincinnati. That system applies to every team in the National Football League. And what does the teams in the National Football League do in games when they score less than 10 points 3 games in a row? That applies to the whole league, and that becomes not a trend applicable to just the team, but to the whole league in itself. And that's the gold inside of technical handicapping.
Just to answer it a little bit more, I track 80 such things every year in the NFL, 80 different categories, playing a third straight game on grass, switching from grass to turf, scoring over 90 points in 3 straight, over a 3-game period. I chart, not with the individual team. Yeah, I chart what the league as a whole do, and I do 80 of them every week, starting with about the 5th week of the season.
So going back further, as I got into this out of dice baseball and into sports and loving math and all that, I have to admit that my first love in sports wagering came from when I would read the Gold Sheet. And I would read the Gold Sheet in study hall in school. And I wouldn't study what I was supposed to do. I had a real nice ability in school. I never had to study. But I could pour through baseball and pour through the Gold Sheet, especially with what they had to say. And I'm really thrilled that Mort Olson was just inducted, by the way, guys, into the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame posthumously. Well deserved.
That's great. That's great.
So,
by the way, Mark, I'm guessing in your library you have copies of this book.
Yes, I do.
And probably from back in the day. Where is it here? This book.
Oh, that was the Bible right there, Andy. Yep. You can go back to, I think, 1971 as far as scores and lines and everything else went like that. So that's all of what I became and how it is I became enthralled in this business because of the math, the history, and sports all combined.
Now, Mark, as far as the Gold Sheet, we all used to read it. I would read it cover to cover, of course. The thing that was interesting to me about the Gold Sheet, and I learned a lot from it, was a great publication, and Mort was a great guy. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
I would read the write-ups, but I'd get a totally different answer than they did by reading it. I mean, they'd read this great write-up, and I'd come up with this in my head that this would, and that in the end, they'd pick the other side that I would pick, reading their words.
No.
But do you know why that was, Jim?
No, I don't.
It was probably because at the Gold Sheet, they had a team of 3 handicappers: Bruce Marshall, Gary Olson Jr., and Carl Giordano.
Oh, Carl,
yeah. And the 3 of them comprised their handicapping team. I don't know if Mort did or didn't, or Mort was the final say on what the predictions or the lines were. But anyway, they all had games to cover. So they cover their games. They do their write-ups. Bruce Marshall has his style. They all had their individual styles, but in the end, it all comes down to what are we going to use for our best plays? Well, I do that in the Playbook now because I'll get our Playbook games, every game newsletter ready, and I do all the research and all the work, and I'll hand it off to 2 or 3 guys, and they'll use my notes and put it into words, and I'll tell them it's Cincinnati over Cleveland by 16, and that's what they'll do. They'll do that right up toward that side of the game. I don't know if they did that with the Gold Sheet. I think it was a person's write-up, and then it was somebody else making the determination of their pick. I think that's what it was.
Question mark. Do you try that at all with AI right now when you're looking at games just to see what they come up with?
No. The only thing I'll do with AI today is I will go in there and I'll say, preview the Denver Nuggets Golden State Warriors game tonight, just to see what they have to say. Not that I'm going to use it.
Not that you're going to use it, but that you sort of get a flavor for because now, see, that's another thing to keep in mind now, is that probably a lot of people who bet sports and want to do it on their own are questioning AI. So when you question AI about a game, who knows, tens of thousands of people may have asked the same question about that game. So you may get an idea of what information they're using, correct or incorrect, to make their decisions on wagering, because we now have the AI possibility. In fact, I was going to mention to you, Mark, one of the things that I heard you with Ken last night. You talked, and how in the old days, you would publish 1 issue a week. And I tried that for a few years. It just became too time consuming. But you pointed out the great thing. How can you make a prediction on a game? Football's beautiful because you play it once a week. But in college basketball, for example, or the NBA, you can play 3 or 4 games during the week. Okay. So how can you make a prediction on a game that's going to be played, 2 games after the one that is the first one in the newsletter? And remember, back in those days, you didn't have the internet. Everything had to go out in the U.S. mail. Exactly. So it became even more difficult. Now it's a lot easier to do things, 2-3 times a week, because the information, once you're done and you hit send, okay, the next 3 or 4 days are covered. And then
it's simply taking advantage of all our resources we have today, largely being the internet, and be able to gather information and facts and doing stuff
saving
like
on postage.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we going to recap the Super Bowl, because I'm going to run out of time?
Okay, real quick, Greg, any thoughts you have on what got you in this game, real quick, because we want to recap this?
It was my dad taking me to the Trotters at the Meadowlands. That's what got me. I used to, because my parents were divorced. So my father used to pick me up on weekends, and it would either be movies or sporting events. And sometimes it would be the Meadowlands. Sometimes it would be I go to hockey games or at the Garden, football games. Sometimes at the Meadowlands on Sundays.
Where'd you grow up, Greg?
In Union City, which was just across the river from New York City. Yeah. So we were only like 10 minutes from East Rutherford. And my father worked and had season tickets because of the company to all the big events. So it was a really good situation for a young kid. So that's where I got interested in horse racing. I got interested in trotters to begin with. Remember the old show, The Racing for the Meadowlands?
Yep.
Channel 9.
Channel 9, and I used to be dropped off at my father would drop me off on the weekends with his at his mom's house, my grandma's house, and I'd stay there overnight and I'd watch. I stay up late on the weekends and I'd watch like Odd Couple, Star Trek, and Racing at the Meadowlands. And so I'm watching the Racing at Meadowlands show. Of course, I'm not betting anything. I have no idea, thinking back now, why I would like that when I don't have any money to bet.
Because it came on right after wrestling.
No, I never watched wrestling.
You didn't watch it because that was right on before the racing show.
No, I never did the wrestling. So that's probably what did it. I'm sure it did. That I got that in my blood, and so I never got into serious gambling until actually in doing it right until I met and started to work with Mark. So, I was just somebody who I would bet just like the average white-blooded American. I bet a lot, but not a lot like you guys. But I didn't really handicap seriously until I started working and understanding what I was doing wrong and what I was doing right by working with Mark and reading his magazine.
Well, you got a real good feel for the horses, Greg. I got to say that. I know you do your show with John Hardoon, and you two work real well together. And I know you picked up a lot from John along the way as well. Yes.
I can't even believe that I've been doing the show with John for almost 20 years. Yes. It's just the time flies. It's incredible. So,
all right, let's wrap this up. Jim's got a roll. Any final thoughts on the Super Bowl? And I'm going to just lead off with one thought about the props. Okay. And, the way the props shook out this year. And I don't bet a lot of props, but looking back, it's 2020 is hindsight is always 2020. But the one prop that I look back and think to myself, why didn't I do this? Is the prop was the total amount of rushing yards for the two teams combined was 224.5. Oh. And you look at the two teams, and you had elite defenses against the run. You had two quarterbacks that were not exceptional. One, kind of like shaking in his knees in his first start. Darnold, nothing exceptional. And the prop cashed. It was 220 yards they rushed total. Didn't cash easily, but that was the prop I'm going to look at hard next year to see.
By the way, it closed down at 217.5, so it could have been middled. Or if you got to the party late, you lost. Because I noticed it was 220 exactly, and it came and maybe it would have been actually a little higher if Darnold didn't take the knee at the end.
Wow.
But in actuality, I know we've talked a lot about props and bets and stuff, but Jim, just to answer your question, as far as recapping the Super Bowl, I think the matter is, and I think we all know this, is it was a really bad game, no matter what Chris Collinsworth says.
Bad Bunny won the Super Bowl, guys.
and when your halftime show becomes the bigger story, that's not a good thing. It was fortunately, it wasn't a great game, and it was just dominated by Seattle's defense. And maybe that's not a surprise. We should learn that's something that is getting back into the NFL. At least that's one good thing. Defense reminds everybody that's what wins championships. And the running game, the running back, just imagine how much money Kenneth Walker might have just made, because now he's the MVP of the Super Bowl and he's a free agent this offseason.
Remember a couple of years ago, everybody was saying the running back doesn't matter. We don't need running backs, et cetera. Don't pay them. And it's how ridiculous this
back-to-back years, because Barkley last year.
Yeah, Barkley. Yeah. And Christian McCaffrey is best all-around running back in the game when you combine his receiving and and his blocking too, for that matter, in addition to the running.
Jim, what's the one thing you take away from the Super Bowl this year? I know you cashed real well, real big. Just you and Greg had a feast. I know that. But that aside, what's the one thing you took away from the Super Bowl this year?
Well, when I start looking at any game, if there's some reason to look at the coaches as being diverse, and what they might do and what tools they have to do things. I look at this game and I say, well, Vrabel I like, McDonald I like. Okay, what do they have? Well, you got Darnold, who's been in the league 5 or 6 years, been around a bunch of teams, hasn't had great success, but he did have a 15-win season last year and a 14 or 15 wins this season. And you got Drake May, is a young kid who hasn't played at this level for very long. What is the one thing that you could do as a coach? And I felt that the one thing you could do to Darnold was try to shake him up, throw a lot of pressure at him, and see if he would crack like he had in the past. Well, after playing through a tougher schedule, I didn't think that was going to happen too much. I thought that he was going to play more conservative, not turn the ball over, and be ready for that type of situation. As it turned out, I was right. Now, by the other side, I felt that you could really shake up May,
right,
because he was very young, very inexperienced, had come through 3 games, very unusual 3 games, played in very bad weather, pretty much, and didn't have an offensive line. I mean, it was just all sort of broke in their favor. Well, as it turned out, a lot of the sacks that May took were self-inflicted. And when I listened to Ross Tucker and Greg Cosell and people like that, what he was doing when the line was coming after him, he would run he would actually move forward instead of backward. And he caused himself a lot of the sacks, which comes from almost like Stroud did. So you could see that these young guys that didn't have that type of experience, and I felt that kind of a situation would happen. And that's what happened early in the game. The pressure on May, I think, turned him into a different kid. I think he's great talent. I think he's going to be a great player, and I think Vrabel's going to be a great coach. So I'm not taking anything away from that. But this experience was too much. The stage was too big for him at this point. And I look at that. I look at that experience level. And that comes back to the SOS, strength of schedule, and things like that. They're big in my thinking. I'm not a big analytics person, maybe because I kind of grew up without it, but I do put it into the mix, and I do look at the trends, and I do read about the systems, and they're there to reinforce what my feeling is to begin with. And my bet might be at one level, but then if those systems and trends also back up what I like, the bet gets higher.
Jim, you hit it right on the head. It's what handicapping is all about. It's an accumulation of edges.
Yep.
And everybody has their own style, whether it's technical, fundamental, however it is you break down your handicapping. It really truly doesn't matter what it is. It's what you're comfortable with, what you feel most confident in, and then check the boxes. Gather as many edges as you can in your favor. And that's why you cash big time in the Super Bowl.
The one thing I really wish Victor was part of these conversations, because he's very bright, and I would love to hear what he has to say, but unfortunately he's
well. The good thing about Victor, guys, is he was talking about retiring and being the totals tip sheet the last year, but he has decided to do it again next year.
Great.
So we will have Victor in our presence next year.
Great.
So that'll be a big plus for us, everybody on ProLine TV.
Absolutely.
Andy, what's the one thing that you took away from the Super Bowl the most this year?
Well, you probably got a chance. You did get a chance to read my newsletter.
Yes.
And one thing that I do, let me just get this camera working again. Okay, is I write like 20 pages. 2/3 of it is related to the Super Bowl, the history, the game, the analysis, and 1/3 of it is related to the props, and then there's some spreadsheets there. But one of the things that I do towards the end, before I get into going through my prediction and all that, is I do a summary of.
Oh, I really did it. I guess Andy's off for now. He'll be back in a sec, I'm sure.
I see him. But I don't hear him. There he is.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. A summary of key points. 3 reasons to support. I'll just make.
Just leave your avatar on, Andy. It doesn't matter as long as we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've got. Okay. 3 reasons to support Seattle. 3 reasons to support New England. 3 factors against Seattle. 3 factors against New England as a summary. The number one factors against New England. The highly rated defenses of Chargers, Texans, Broncos sacked May 5 times each in the past 3 playoff wins. Okay, so that was.
Wow.
It sounds
Well,
like.
I tell you what, we're gonna. I want to close with some because I know we wanted to at least get into some college basketball talk, and I know Jim's not going to get into this. So, Jim, if you want to leave now, I know you got to run.
I just want to ask. I just want to ask one college basketball question. Just
Sure.
I'll start more with this later.
Great, terrific.
The kid for Kansas, Peterson, is that his name?
Yes.
Okay. Highly regarded, number 1 draft choice, but now he's dropping because they're afraid that he's only played. I think you and I talked about it the other day. He's only played 11 of the 24 games. I mean, he takes himself out of games. He doesn't have some kind of an attitude. He
doesn't have the drive. It doesn't sounds like, right?
Yeah. Now the NBA is saying, God, are we going to pay this kid a lot of money? Number 1 draft choice. And I mean, I'd have to question it. I think there's enough red flags to wonder what the hell's going on with this kid.
I agree with you. He looks like Ben Simmons made all over again.
Oh, no. Really? Oh, that was a disaster.
Yes.
And then, of course, the irony is they beat the undefeated team
without
him.
Without him, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
so
himself is a hell of a coach. He's always
been.
So,
right, exactly right.
There goes back to the coaching.
So we just want to remind everybody that we are going to get into college basketball. I don't know, hopefully starting maybe even next week, a little bit here and there. I'll have my show on Fridays. I do that every Friday night.
Heck, we're barely 2 weeks away from the start of the conference tournaments at the end of February.
That's right.
Yeah, how nice is that?
Yes. So
let me say one thing before we wrap this up here, guys. I know Jim's got a roll, but I found this most interesting, and it's all about Ken Pom, and he's probably the most respected data analyst guy I think that's out there. Yeah. And it's largely because he does things that people understand and doesn't come up with phrases or phraseology that nobody knows what it even means. But I came across this. I put this in the coffee club, and this is one super system that has developed with the work that Ken Pom does. And what it revolves around is teams' offensive and defensive efficiencies. And if they rank in the top 25 in Ken Pom's offensive and defensive efficiencies, since 2002, every NCAA champion has come from this list except one, and that was Connecticut. And I want to share with our listeners out there who the 10 teams are right now that are currently on that list, and we'll see where they end up.
These are teams that are on both offensive and defensive top 25.
They check both boxes. Number 1, Arizona. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Houston. Number 4, Duke. No surprise. They're the top 4 teams in the country. Number 5, Iowa State. Then Gonzaga, Purdue, Florida, Vanderbilt, and the surprise, the Iowa Hawkeyes. The team that's missing is who? The only undefeated team in the country.
Miami?
Miami of Ohio, yes.
Yeah.
For all the reasons that we all know of. So I just want to slip that in there. And Jim, when you come back next week, we'll start doing the college and NBA basketball. I know you're a big basketball guy, and we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay.
You know what I'd like to think maybe next week, and Jim can join us, would be good to this. Early thoughts on Super Bowl futures for next year. The odds are out.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll hit on that. For sure we will.
Can't say no to futures.
No. Jim, I'm going to let you go. Guys, I'm going to let you go. We're going to put the wraps on the show here right now. Today it was a real good show, very informative. I like learning about everybody and where they came from and who they are and why they are what they are. So for the cast of experts here on Proline TV, the Against the Spread podcast, until next week, once again, this is Mark Lawrence, reminding you to always remember to bet with your head, not over it.